How's everyone doing this morning? I invite you to stand up here and we'll sing Sweetly Broken, this first song. To the cross I look, to the cross I cling. Of its suffering I do drink, of its work I do sing. For on it my Savior, both bruised and crushed, showed that God is love and God is just. At the cross you beckon me, draw me gently to my knees, and I am so lost for words, so lost in love. I'm sweetly broken, wholly surrendered. What a priceless gift, undeserved life have I been given through Christ crucified. You called me out of death, you called me into life. I was under your wrath, now through the cross reconciled. At the cross you beckon me, draw me gently to my knees, and I am so lost for words, so lost in love. I'm sweetly broken, wholly surrendered. At the cross you beckon me, draw me gently to my knees, and I am so lost for words, so lost in love. I'm sweetly broken, wholly surrendered. In awe of the cross I must confess, how wondrous your redeeming love, and how great is your faithfulness. At the cross you beckon me, draw me gently to my knees, and I am so lost for words, so lost in love. I'm sweetly broken, wholly surrendered. At the cross you beckon me, draw me gently to my knees, and I am so lost for words, so lost in love. I'm sweetly broken, wholly surrendered. Yeah, yeah. Slow down, take time, breathe in, he said, he'd reveal what's to come. The thoughts in his mind, always higher than mine, he'll reveal all to come. So take courage, my heart, and stay steadfast, my soul. He's in the waiting. He's in the waiting. And hold on to your hope as your triumph unfolds. He's never failing. He's never failing. Sing praise, my soul. Find strength in joy. Let his words lead you on. Do not forget his great faithfulness. He'll finish all he's begun. So take courage, my heart, and stay steadfast, my soul. He's in the waiting. He's in the waiting. So hold on to your hope as your triumph unfolds. He's never failing. He's never failing. So take courage, my heart, and stay steadfast, my soul. He's in the waiting. He's in the waiting. And hold on to your hope as your triumph unfolds. He's never failing. He's never failing. To him who holds the stars, who call them out by name, will surely keep your promise to me, that I will rise in your victory. To you who hold the stars, who call them out by name, will surely keep your promise to me, that I'll rise in victory. Take courage, my heart, and stay steadfast, my soul. He's in the waiting. He's in the waiting. And hold on to your hope as your triumph unfolds. He's never failing. He's never failing. So take courage, my heart, stay steadfast, my soul. He's in the waiting. He's in the waiting. And hold on to your hope as your triumph unfolds. He's never failing. He's never failing. 'Cause he's in the waiting. He's in the waiting. He's in the waiting. He's in the waiting. Yeah, he's in the waiting. All right, we're going to play a newer song called Made for More. I think it's like the second or third time we played it, so here we go. Well, the kids are now dismissed. Take a look in the corner there. Tracy's got a red flag. Or, sorry, yellow flag. All right, here we go. I know who I am. I know who you are. The cross of salvation is only the start. Now I am chosen. I'm free and forgiven. I have a future, and it's worth the living. Here we go. 'Cause I wasn't made to be tending the grave. I was called by name, born and raised back to life again. I was made for more. So why would I make a bed in my shame when a fountain of grace is running my way? I know I am yours, and I was made for more. I know who I am. I know who you are. A cross of salvation is only the start. Now I am chosen, free and forgiven. I have a future, and it's worth the living. Though I wasn't made to be tending a grave, I was called by name, born and raised back to life again. I was made for more. So why would I make a bed in my shame when a fountain of grace is running my way? I know I am yours, and I was made for more. I want to get a little low here. Hallelujah. You called out my name, so I'll sing out your praise. Hallelujah. You buried my past, so I'm not going back, singing hallelujah. You called out my name, so I'll sing out your praise, singing hallelujah. You buried my past, so I'm not going back. 'Cause I wasn't made to be tending a grave. I was called by name, born and raised back to life again. I was made for more. So why would I make a bed in my shame when a fountain of grace is running my way? I know I am yours, and I was made for more. Last time, 'cause I wasn't made tending the grave. I was called by name, born and raised back to life again. I was made for more. So why would I make a bed in my shame when a fountain of grace is running my way? I know I am yours, and I was made for more. All right, you may be seated.
You live like this, comfortable, sheltered in a world full of possibility, and you believe that you're living. Millions live like this without even knowing it, working in an office, sitting on the train, going to the gym. The days go by, comfortable, watching others live their dreams. Then maybe one day you read a book, you meet someone, or you take a trip, and discover that you weren't living, just existing. Now you're awake. You feel fear and thrill and excitement, knowing that it's the moments that challenge us that add meaning to life. You realize that living, truly living, isn't comfortable at all.
Good morning. I want to welcome those of you who are watching online, wherever you might be, and if you're watching in Richland Center, thanks for being a part of it. And those of you who are here in Dodgeville, we are really glad that you are here. If you are here in Dodgeville, I would encourage you to take a look at that information sheet. We just give you an update on where our finances are, and just to be completely honest and transparent, we're kind of operating at a deficit right now, so we need those who call Hidden Valley home to give regularly and sacrificially. The summer months are often with people gone. That happens in the summer. But we just need people who will make a commitment to give regularly so God can continue doing what God wants to do. That's what we really care about around here. So my name's Scott. For those of you who don't know, I'm on staff here. I get to work with a bunch of really great staff people and volunteers, and we're looking forward to what the fall has for us. This is our last Sunday in the book of Philippians. We'll get there in a moment. Next week, we're going to start a really short series, just a couple of weeks, from one of those Old Testament names that you're like, why did his parents ever name him that? We're going to look at a guy named Haggai next week. And what Haggai has to tell us is about having a life that's more than just mundane. You know, so that's next couple weeks, and then we kind of hit the fall with all kinds of good things, and you'll hear more about those things as we move along. However, I do want to visit something last week that kind of bothered me, just a little bit. If you weren't here last week, or you weren't watching, we had a juggler here on stage, and I was sitting right over there. And it's not often that I get to sit and watch you. And I was watching you. Here's what I want you to know. It just bothered me a little bit. I'm not jealous, maybe a little bit. But you know, when there was a juggler on stage, and whatever he was like, he would talk about fire or he would juggle, you all would like lean in. And you were like really paying attention. And so I thought to myself, why not? And actually, after the service, some of you said, well, why don't you juggle, Scott? And remember last week, for those of you who, by the way, if you weren't here last week and you weren't watching, I'd encourage you to go to our YouTube channel, go to our website. You will really be glad you did, because he gave us an awesome message. But I just got to be honest with you, watching all of you lean in, I was just a little bit jealous. And he told a story. He didn't do this on stage. He told a story about a time when he lit tennis balls on fire and he juggled them. And I thought to myself, I have tennis balls. I have a flame. Why not? So are you ready? I don't see anybody leaning in exactly right now. In fact, if anything, you're kind of go, whoa. Are you ready? Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Here's why I'm not going to do that. Because there's not one possible good outcome of me lighting tennis balls on fire. But I do have your attention now. So we can go to the book of Philippians. For the last time this summer, we're going to look at this book. And I do want to remind you, Philippians, and whether we knew this or not, really is a lot about juggling in life. Philippians 20 times mentions the word joy. And he talks about, how do I get joy? How do I have joy? And for Paul to have joy in some of his circumstances, we've learned, it required a lot of juggling. Because in the book, we found out, as we read this book, we found out he was in prison. Not because he'd done anything wrong, but simply because he chose to follow Jesus. But he still has joy. He's juggling here. And we also found this out, and it's amazing, and it's kind of sad, and it's sort of discouraging. But we also found out that there were people, Christians, who took just a little bit of joy in Paul being in prison, because it was their turn, it was their opportunity to kind of step forward and, hey, look at me. And that had to be hard. I mean, how do you juggle that? Your suffering and people who should be caring about you they're kind of taking some joy in it. Paul tells about a friend that he had show up, somebody from the church in Philippi. They'd sent someone to him to help him, to kind of be there to support him. And what happened to that individual? Well, he got sick. And it was almost to the point of death sick. So not only, Paul's and this person who shows up and who's supposed to help him, yeah, Paul's juggling. He's juggling relationships. He talks about a couple of women who were really close to him and served next to him, and he had great memories of them, but they weren't getting along. And he talks about his thoughts and about our thoughts, and Paul's juggling. And all of us, to one degree or another, we're kind of juggling, right? I want to have joy, but this is happening. I want to have joy, and I want to be content. But this is... Luke was pretty impressive last week. But really, what some of us have to do to find joy with all that's going on, it's hard. And maybe some of us, maybe we've dropped the ball a couple of times. And so we get to the end of the book. And Paul makes an amazing statement, which I would like to be true for me, and I'd like it to be true for you. He says this in Philippians 4:11. I have learned, in whatever situation I am, to be content. Wouldn't it be great if we could get there? I have learned in whatever situation to be content. And by the way, when Paul wrote that, he put a lot of thought. This wasn't an afterthought. This wasn't like I'm just trying to fill up the spaces. I just need to write a couple more sentences, then I'm done. Because this is the only time this word is found in the whole New Testament. In other words, Paul said, I got to give you the right word here. I just want to pick the right word. It's the only time this word is ever used in the New Testament. And it's the word content. But this is what content really means. It means joy on the inside. And to borrow that word that was kind of been our theme as a church for the year 2025, thriving in the heart. Paul chooses a word that's kind of like something that comes from inside. He's not looking at his life on the outside and the fact that he's in prison, the fact that there's people who are kind of pleased that he's in prison. He's got this friend who almost died. He's got these people who aren't getting along, and he's not looking at these things and saying, yeah, the stuff that I'm juggling, that's not why I'm thriving. It comes from here. There's something on the inside. And we know that in our culture, all of us are taught when we're asked the question, how you doing? What are we supposed to say? I'm fine. We don't even take classes on that, but that's what we do, right? I'm okay. And we never ask the person, are you sure you're okay? Because we really, if we're honest, I don't want to know. We've learned to grin and bear it. And so many of us walk around with that face all the time. Most of us, we're willing to settle for something less than content and joy and thriving, because we're taught that's what we're supposed to do. Paul doesn't settle. don't miss what this book is really all about. It's written, it's near the end of his life. It might have been the end of his life. We just don't know. And Paul's doing a lot of this, but he doesn't settle. He aims for content, which is joy and thriving right here. So we're just going to we're going to look back, kind of do a review, but it's really a preview of what my life and your life should look like when we're busy doing some of this stuff. So we're going to look back a little bit, but we're really looking forward to, because we're all doing this. You know, some of us have more or less balls that we're, tossing up and down, but we're all doing that. So how do we get to content, to joy, to thriving? They're all kind of the same word for Paul. First lesson is this: thriving is a journey. You know what Paul didn't do? He never read an article online about the 3 steps to find joy in your life. He never took a class, the 5 steps to always being happy. He wrote this book near the end of his life. When he says that he's learned, it's really this, I'm still learning. I'm still figuring it out. I'm still doing this, and I'm still trying to be happy while I'm, and I'm still trying to have joy while he's still learning. It's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight for anybody. But listen to what he says in verses 12 through 13 of this last chapter. This is what I've learned. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In other words, I know when things are like this. I know when it's good. And in every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hungry, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. That doesn't happen overnight. Nobody gets there just by reading that. In fact, I've read that verse a gazillion times. I still would like to get there. I still haven't figured it all out. But this book has been a bunch of steps along this journey that Paul took, and he invites you and I, through Jesus' help, to take towards joy that comes here. And so we're just going to rapid fire kind of look back over the things that we've looked for the past couple of months and ask yourself, which one of these do I really need to hold on to? And this is the area where I need to take that next step or work in. The first thing is this: joy is life shared. That was the first message of this series. Joy is life shared with other people. Right away in the book, remember, Paul's in prison. He's 800 miles by foot away from this church in Philippi. It's been a long time since he's been there. It's been a long time since he's seen their faces. They, no computers, no phones, none of this stuff. It's been a while. Listen to what he says in verses 3 through 5 of chapter 1. I thank my God in all my remembrance of you, always and in every prayer of mine for you, all making my prayer with joy, because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. He's just really glad, and he's really blessed to have people who care about him, even if they're 800 miles away. The first thing he tells them is not, hey, I'm in prison, life stinks, woe is me. He says, you know what, I'm really thankful for you. I'm really glad you're part of my life. And I get it. Some of us are thinking, you know what? The thing that takes the joy away from me is other people. There was this relationship, and it's gone sour, and it's bad, and it's taken joy away from me. And almost all of us, we can point out to a relationship where it didn't give us joy. It sucks the joy. It sucks the thriving. It keeps us from being content. And you say, yeah, people are not the answer. Can I tell you something? The answer to a bad relationship is not no relationships. I get it. A relationship you had hurt, and it did not bring joy, and you feel like it took it away. But the answer to a bad relationship is just no more. I'm done with relationships. You know, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about this, but maybe what it is you and I need to be just a little more selective. Proverbs 13:20 says it this way: whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. Maybe what needs to change in my life for me to have joy isn't that I just stop people. It's just I find the right people. And you know, if you are around here at Hidden Valley, we got these life groups, a lot of them starting this fall. There's different ones, different nights, different themes, different. But maybe you just need to be around the right people to find joy that's in here. Paul also learned this: contentment always involves perspective. It always means, it's about kind of how you look at life and how you focus and what you see. When Paul wrote this letter, this is what we learned. He was chained 24/7 to a Roman soldier. And very few of those soldiers were kind men. Very few of those soldiers cared about Paul. Many of them were mean and violent. But listen to what he says in verse 12 through 13. This is called perspective. I want you to know, brothers, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel, so that it has become known throughout the whole imperial guard and to all the rest that my imprisonment is for Christ. You know what his perspective was? He didn't say, this guy, I'm chained to him every single day. It was an opportunity to share with another Roman soldier. And he says in verse 13, he says, the whole guard they know why I'm here. Everybody knows why I'm here. How do you know how they knew that? He told them. You know how joy and contentment and thriving happens right here? It means when I wake up in the morning, I realize I got an opportunity today. I may not know what it is, and it may not be an opportunity for you, and you might not like that, but for me, it's an opportunity. So here's a question to ask yourself, as we move towards the fall and schedules, whatever happens to our schedule in the fall, what's your opportunity? What's the thing that you should be doing? Not me, not him, not her. What's the thing that you should be doing that's going to stick some joy right here? And I'm pretty sure that if before Paul went to prison, if you'd asked him, hey, Paul, are you going to find joy in being, connected by a chain to a Roman soldier for the rest of your life? He probably would have said no. But it was his perspective. So what's your opportunity? I mean, you might have to look. You might have to think, what's your opportunity? And then when we got in this book, we found out that Paul actually included a worship song. It may have been the very first worship song ever written about Jesus. And I'm not going to talk about that today because we talked about it back on June 15th. You should go back and watch that because it's pretty amazing stuff. But in the midst of this stuff that was going on in his life, he remembered a worship song about Jesus. And the reason he quotes it is because he wants to remind you and I that thriving is found in humility. Joy, contentment, thriving. If you notice, we're using those words interchangeably because they are. But thriving is found in humility. And let's be honest, most of us don't think that's how it works, right? Because most of us, if we were honest, if I was honest, we think that thriving in joy and contentment comes from answering this question. What I need from you is, and you can fill in the blank for you. What I really need to be happy, I need you to do whatever it is. I need this from that person. I need this. And we have this long list of what we need to thrive. And Paul says that's not going to get it done. It's actually humility. And humility, we learned, isn't thinking less of yourself. I just have no gifts, no talents. I can't do anything. That's not humility. I mean, look what he says in Philippians 2, 3 through 5. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. Have this in mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus. When Jesus was on earth, he was humble. But that doesn't mean Jesus walked around saying, I can't do anything. Actually, Jesus brought dead people back to life. That's a pretty cool talent. He didn't pretend to be less than who he was. He didn't brag about who he was, but he didn't hide it either. He just was who he was for the benefit of other people. Humility means that you be you for him. You use your gifts for her. And then this is where the joy starts then. You don't have to pretend. I just can't do anything. So here's a good question. Where's my opportunity to be humble? To serve. That's what Jesus came. He came to serve. So where's my opportunity? Where's that place that I can serve other people? It's different for all of us because we got different talents. But where's that place that if I were to give me, this thrives? And then he gets to another, thing that's really, really important. Joy happens on purpose. You know what I do sometimes? Just need to be honest with you. Sometimes I fold my arms and I'm like, woe is me. I'm sad. And I just kind of wait until somebody shows up to do something, and no one ever shows up to do something. Joy happens on purpose. So when Paul wrote this, he'd been faithfully serving Jesus for 30 plus years. He'd started countless. We honestly don't know how many different churches Paul started. And there are probably churches today that are connected to a church in Europe, churches started because of what Paul did. And after 30 plus years, you know what he deserved around his wrist? He deserved a gold, retirement watch. But what did he have? A rusty shackle. You know what he didn't do? He didn't complain. Because this is what he says in Philippians 2:14. Do all things without grumbling or disputing. So I learned something this week. Actually, I learned something most weeks. But I learned something very interesting. Do you know how many synonyms, words that mean the same thing, there are in the English language for the word complaining and disputing? How many synonyms there are? Probably like 20, 30, right? There are 85 words. And what that means is we've gotten so good at complaining, and we do it in so many different ways, we have to invent new words just to talk about all the different things. There are 85 different words for complaining. And so I thought I'd use some of them today to make you think I expanded my vocabulary. You want to know what the first one I thought was really cool? Yawping. Yawping never leads to joy. You know what yawping means? Yawping is that tendency that some of us have to always have to verbalize when we're upset. You know, everybody else in the room can feel good about things. I just got to tell you, I'm not happy. That's yawping. Some of us are yawpers. Don't be a yawper. The next word, I didn't know this was a word for complaining. Bleating. B-L-E-A-T-I. It's never going to lead contentment. You know what bleating is? It's when you're like a sheep and everything is bad. Seriously, that's what it is. Some of us can look at a situation and we always see the bad. Don't bleat. This is a kind of a cool one. Cavilling. Cavilling, it never leads to thrive. You know what cavilling is? It's kind of like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Remember Goldilocks? It was too hot, it's too cold, too soft, too hard. Some of us cavil. It's too short. It's too hard. It's too long. It's too easy. It's too hot. It's too humid. It's too cold. You just use too, T-O-O, too many times. That's cavilling. Don't do that. Paul says that's never going to lead to joy. You know what? Complaining and joy can't coexist. I mean, think about the person who you know complains the most. And if they're sitting next to you, do not look at them right now. But I'll bet you know this about that person. They're not really that joyful. Paul made a choice. I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to yawp. I'm not going to cavil. I'm not going to bleat. I'm not going to do what are those other 80-plus words for complain. Just don't do it. And so here's a really important question that some of us need to ask, and I need to ask this one. Where in my life do I complain to the point where it takes away joy? Not just for the people, but for me too, Where's my yawping getting in the way? And then we learned something really, really important a few weeks ago, I think 2 or 3, I'm not sure, that should cause us all just to take a sigh of relief. Because this is really good news. Contentment isn't having all the answers. Contentment doesn't mean you have all the answers. You know, some of us are waiting to be joyful and to thrive when you've got it all figured out. When everything just lines up really nice in your life and there's no problems and there's no surprises and every day is exactly the way you want it and you've got it all organized and everybody listens. That's not going to happen. You know, Paul, we're not going to read this portion, but Paul talks about all the areas of his life where he hasn't figured out the answers yet. Remember, he's near the end of his life. I haven't figured this out. I'm still working on this. I'm still striving for this. I'm still reaching for this. I'm still pressing forward. I'm still. But then he makes a statement, in Philippians 3:15. Let those of us who are mature think this way. In other words, you don't have to pretend you have it all together to have joy. It's okay to not have it all figured out. In fact, starting next week, when we look at that guy named Haggai in the Bible, he was working with a group of people who thought they had it all figured out, but then they were like, something's missing. Something's not right. And they didn't know what it was. We'll find out next week what it was. So, and then something happened here. That God kind of reminded me that he would like me to stress something. That something's really, really important. And here's how I know that God thinks this is important. Because 2 weeks ago, this is the verse we looked at, Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. And we looked at that verse. And then last week we had the juggler on stage, the one who, do you remember what verse he quoted when he talked about joy? He quoted this verse. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's anything excellent, if there's anything worth praise, think about these things. So 2 weeks ago, the message, and by the way, we didn't talk ahead of time, hey, we're going to look at this verse, so why don't you do the verse? I think we didn't do that. Do you believe in coincidences? I don't. I think God is trying to tell us something about thoughts and joy. I think God is trying to tell us that there's a real connection between what happens here and what happens here. If this is all messed up, there's going to be problems here. So here's the last lesson. And it's a really important one. But here's the last lesson that I think we're supposed to learn from the book of Philippians about joy, about being content, about this thing called thriving. Thriving starts with your thoughts. It starts up here. Joy, this joy here, starts here. Thriving starts with your thoughts. Specifically, I think it starts with God's thoughts about you. It's just a little lesson I've learned from listening to a few of you over the past month or so. Thinking healthy thoughts, which leads to joy, starts with how God thinks about you. And so there's a lesson that in all my years as a youth pastor, I give this lesson once or twice a year, sometimes more. I've given this lesson here in church on Sunday because I think it's really, really important how God thinks about you. So on page 1 of the Bible, we're talking right up here, God tells us how he thinks about us. So here's what happens on page 1 of the Bible. And some of you know this story, and if you don't, that's fine. But this is what happens on page 1 of the Bible. God starts making stuff. So he makes waterfalls. He makes these things that are called a galaxy. He makes elephants. He makes an axolotl. And you know what God says about each of those things? I mean, what's cooler than an axolotl? You know what God says about each of those things? He says this, it's good. And I don't know about you, but if I were there with God at the time and I would be like, you're underselling yourself, God. Isn't it better than good what you just did? I mean, it's a waterfall. The water is falling. It's a galaxy. There's like bazillions and gazillions of stars, and they're kind of together, but they're not together, and they got planets going around them, and they never hit each other, and they swirl, and they do all these really cool things, and you got elephants, and you got the axolotl, and which has a smile on his face all the time, and all you say is, it's good, God. But then you get to page 2, or maybe it's still on page 1. It depends how big your Bible is. Then God changes his tune. Then God, he just says good, 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 good. He gets to day 6, and then he says something different. He says, it's very good. Well, what happened? What happened for that good became very good? What happened on day 6 where good became very good? I mean, I would have thought that waterfalls and elephants and galaxies and axolotls and whatever else would be very good. But what happened on day 6? You know what happened on day 6? Pumpkin pie. And it's almost that season. And if you need someone to humbly sample, I am your guy. What happened on day 6 for very good? God made man and woman. And then that's when he said in Genesis 1:31, he said, it was very good. All that stuff that God created is good. When God created you, he said, very good. I didn't say that everything you've ever done is good. But when God created you, he said, very good. And we're going to learn some Hebrew today because I think it's really, really important. The Hebrew words for very good describe you. And these are the words, tov ma'od. Say it. Tov ma'od. That means you're very good. I didn't say that everything you've ever done is very good. But your value in God's eyes, you are tov ma'od. And I've taught this to students for like 30 plus years. You are tov ma'od. Doesn't mean everything you do is good. But that's how God thinks about you. And you say to yourself, Scott, you don't understand how bad I've done. I believe you. You've probably done some pretty bad things. But God knows that. You know what he says about you? You're tov ma'od. He knows you've sinned. He knows you've done some bad things. In fact, Romans 3:23 says this, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And that word sinned, it means to miss. We've all missed. And a miss is a miss. It doesn't matter by how much you miss. A miss is a miss. We've all missed. He knows that. But your value, your tov ma'od, you're very good. Even when you've done very bad, he still looks at you and says, you're valuable. So this is what God thinks about you. You are very good, but he knows you've done very bad. So what is God supposed to do with that? I mean, it's almost like it's a dilemma that God has to what is he going to do? Very good, but done very bad. Well, this is what he did. He sent his son. And his son lived the very good life we were supposed to. And then he died to pay the very bad sin penalty. It says it this way in 2 Corinthians 5:21. For our sake he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God in him. Here's how God thinks about you. And this is where joy starts. Joy that comes in here. You have done bad. Some of you may think to yourself, I've done too bad. And you know what? You're right. But Jesus came. Some of you think, I've really done bad things. You're right, you have. So have I. But that's why Jesus came. The only place that you're wrong is you don't think, I'm not very good. Actually, you are. You're pretty valuable to God. Here's how I know. Jesus died for you. I guess that means you're valuable. You're not the exception. He died for everybody but me. That's how God thinks about you. So for some of us, joy, contentment, thriving, it starts with Jesus. God says you're really good, but you've done really bad, and that's why Jesus came. And when you just tell him that when we close in prayer in a few moments. And for the rest of us, look at this list. Look at what we've been doing this summer. What is it that gets in the way of you having joy and contentment and thriving here? Because here's what's not going to happen in life. We're not going to suddenly stop having to juggle a bunch of things. That's, if you're waiting till everything falls into place and everything works right and everything, it's never going to happen. So what's the step for me to thrive? Let's pray. God, I thank you for the book of Philippians. Thank you for Paul, who wrote a book when his life was difficult and it was hard. And it would have been really easy for him to say, I quit. But he didn't do that. So we're blessed today because he took the time to write a book. God, I pray for anybody who maybe thinks that they've done too bad for you. There's no such thing as too bad. You really look at us and say, very good. And you sent Jesus to pay for our very bad. And I pray if there's anybody watching or in person, they'd simply say, God, thank you for sending Jesus. I know I have done very bad, but you value me and you sent your son to die in my place. Thanks for your goodness to us. Thank you for the kindness to us. In Jesus' name, amen. So we got a couple of announcements before we go today. First of all, our monthly serving focus. You'll notice over there, there's a bed. We're supporting sleep in heavenly peace. And it's happening in our county. It's just kind of getting off to starting. And what they need is the supplies to build the beds. And if you look on the wall over there by the bed, there are the different supplies. Because they're a national organization, we have to be very specific with the supplies, and we have to buy exactly what's up there. So if you want to be a part of that, you can take one of those pieces of paper, and you can buy those things, or you can contribute financially, and we'll get those things. But the goal is that in Iowa County, we're going to help kids who don't have a bed at home get a bed at home. I mentioned that this is an organization that's really just starting in Iowa County, to the point where tomorrow is the ribbon cutting ceremony. It's at the Dodgeville Chamber of Commerce at 4 p.m. If you want to go there and just support them, we're on the ground level with this thing in terms of helping people in that project. So take a look at that before you go home today. See how you can help. This Tuesday is Ruby's. So we are always looking for more people who want to come serve and help in a variety of different ways. There's things to be done as we serve our community. What we give away is what we call a share. For $25, you get a share with the food that's in it, and we get to put them in the cars for people. We get to pray with those people. We get to say, have a great fall to those people. Just serve our community. So if you'd like to help with that, we'd love to have you for a long time or a short amount of time at that day. It would be awesome. Today is the last day to let me know if you're interested in baptism, so please talk to me. We'll tell you a little bit about what it is, what the expectations are, why you do it. And then for the rest of us, next Sunday is a great time to come and watch a baptism because it's a lot of fun, and we're meant to cheer, and we're supposed to have fun. It's not a solemn occasion. It's people who love Jesus. They just want to let you know that. That's what baptism is. Please fill out your connection card. Put that in the offering box. If you have a prayer request, put that on there. We have a group of people who pray for you. Please fill out that little question at the bottom. That always helps us with our messages in the future, kind of figure out where we're supposed to go and what God would want us to talk about. I'll be down front. I'd love to meet you. I want to thank Richland Center for joining us. If you're watching online, and if you're here in person, thanks for being a part of this. Before you go home, meet somebody. Have a fantastic week.